Hi, everybody out there watching. Welcome to our presentation entitled Differentiation in a Crowded Online Marketplace. We're going to talk to you about the ways that Wiley Ed Services is partnering with institutions all over the world to take a very consumer approach to marketing, enrollment, and course design. We'd like to start with some introductions. My name is Corey Burnson. I live in Chicago, and I'm the Senior Director of New Partner Development at Wiley. I've been with the organization for close to 17 years now, and a lot of my career has actually been spent in enrollment management, supporting students and helping them on their journey to decide which school to go back to. Corey?
Hey everyone, I'm also Corey Miller. I'm in the Orlando, Florida office. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Insights and Innovations at Wiley Education Services, and I've been with the organization for 8 years.
Hi everyone, my name is William Cochran. I'm the Associate Director of Instructional Media at Wiley. I've been with the organization for about 7 years. I work in our learner experience group, and my job is to sort of make sure that the course experience and the course design is distinct, highly engaging, and very outcomes focused.
So to kick things off, we want to talk a little bit about the higher ed landscape and share some data with you. Wiley, as a premier partner with Google, routinely commissions reports to monitor search trends within higher ed. And this enables us to maintain an accurate pulse of the market, its trends and themes, and really in turn, it enables us to better support the institutional needs of our more than 70 partners, George Mason being one of those, which we're going to showcase today. The real question, as you look at this data, how do you win in a market where traditional growth is flat, disruption is growing, and most programs are eliminated from consideration before standard marketing strategies even have time to start, which is what the data is telling us. The market for online education is highly competitive and it's crowded. I'll bet everybody watching this understands that. And so student engagement and tight enrollment management practices matter more than ever before. What we know and what we're going to share in our story here with you today is that consumers or students are really seeking a self-service digital experience. And they're used to consumer experiences that historically higher ed has not been delivering. What we know is that schools and programs are going to have to do more to stand out and attract quality students. Over 70 institutions across the world have partnered with Wiley and our team to remain competitive and find growth in this market. And the story we're going to share with you today relates to George Mason specifically, but all of our best practices and what we're going to show you here, we're doing with over our 70 institutions across the world. Wiley is trying to build a really customer-focused experience, web design, service and experience education that is on par with other industries.
Thanks, Corey. So as we thought about who our customer is, the student, and kind of the experiences that they're used to in kind of today's buying world, we wanted to get outside of education and draw inspiration from, other leading brands and experiences around the world. So, when we think about the research journey and how a student kind of engages with an institution, we think about it in kind of three major buckets. The first being at the top of the funnel, marketing, where it's engaging a prospective candidate, looking for a program. The middle bucket kind of being the enrollment, admissions, guidance, and then the third piece being their actual experience in the course. So, thinking about the first part, from a marketing standpoint, there are so many new elevated experiences available to today's buyers. So, as we are creating a digital storefront for our partner brands and their programs, we started to look, at these different, verticals and experiences in the marketplace available to them. So, from a website standpoint, the evolution to presenting information in very clear contemporary digestible format is something that we started to see everywhere. Expectation setting, more information available quicker. Websites continue to grow and add pages. So, we started to notice a lot of effort being spent kind of making it available, making information available to students as they kind of navigated these large ecosystems. So our first example here, Corey, if you can share it, that we looked at was, Tesla, who's really kind of reimagined like how somebody purchases or looks at an automobile online. You can see across the top, just clear definition around the major steps, expectation setting around delivery timelines, being very front and center with information like cost and kind of key attributes. So, these were all things that, historically weren't available at like a degree level, for instance, in higher education. So that was kind of the first thing that we noticed as we kind of got outside of our own vertical. The second one, the second example as we started to look around was, why is it so hard to apply to an institution? It's a very similar process as it's been for decades. And as we looked at our next example, we really love the idea of how TurboTax kind of reimagined how somebody could file their federal and state income tax. And it really got us thinking, how is that easier to do than actually, applying for a degree program? And, as we started to look at the experience and how they really presented information in a self-guided, self-empowered way for, whoever's filing to kind of go through it. They attempted to make it enjoyable. They actually take information that's already been provided and pull that forward, and really power the go forward experience. So, those were all things that we looked at as we started to kind of reimagine how we would market in this competitive environment from a marketing standpoint.
Thanks. Another one is actually, kind of related to the hotel industry. So, as we're talking here, Wiley is really trying to work with our partners to build customer-focused experiences, web design, service, and experience and education that is on par with other industries. And the hotel industry is just one example of this. I'm sure many of you have clicked to chat or interacted with a chat bot, but this is an example of how much can be done right from your mobile device, including talking to somebody at the hotel. What we're trying to create are similar experiences so that students can talk to their institution when it's convenient for them, also right from their mobile phone. Imagine, nobody would have thought higher ed would embrace technology and a consumer-focused engagement like this. Bill?
So let's say, for sake of argument, that I want to get in shape. Now, I could go out and I could buy an exercise bike and I could put it in my basement, but I'm self-aware enough to know that I don't have the motivation for that to be sufficient. Just like I know enough about myself to know that buying a bunch of books about Python wouldn't teach me what I need to know to become a data analyst. Now, I could go into an on-ground program, or I could go into a spin class, and there I would get expert tutelage from an instructor, and I would get support from my peers and motivation. But there's barriers to that. Childcare, a pandemic, just for sake of obstacles, might prevent me from going to my spin class. So we were thinking about the work that Peloton does to really bring in design and high-end media to create motivating dynamics and motivation that really creates and replicates the experience of an on-ground spin class and makes it much more convenient. So when we approach the course design process, we're thinking about, all right, how can we capture the magic of a spin class? How can we make it motivating? How can we show students the possibilities of an on-ground experience and really elevate it beyond what you might be able to do in a classroom? Can we take you out of the classroom and put you in the real world? So the work that Peloton does to sort of create those motivating triggers, to bring people back, to create those personal relationships with the people in your spin class, to create that dopamine rush when your instructor says your name and shouts you out during your class. That's what we're trying to do inside of our course experience as well.
Thanks, Bill. So, those are a couple examples across those three major segments that we drew inspiration from outside of higher education. So what does that actually look like back in our world, and how did we activate on that? So kind of going back to the top of the funnel and thinking about marketing. We saw those examples. We know today's buyers are very sophisticated. We know that they're used to kind of seeing, these enhanced experiences. So, how could we take that, at the institution and degree level and put campaigns in market? So, the first thing we did is kind of reimagine our own strategy. So you can see across the bottom here, we mapped out like what we call the student journey. And that's, starts from their idea to pursue a degree all the way through application. And, the time for that is lengthening. And we're seeing that be several weeks, if not months nowadays. And, a big section of that is this kind of research phase where they're looking at their options. So we really thought about our marketing plans and kind of what we were doing, and we put it all on the table. We identified kind of the 4 key pillars of it, which is, understanding the audience, how we message to them, what our dialogue strategy is, which is, media, where are we placing advertisements, and then what is creative. And when we started to look at how these other industries were doing it, we really kind of started to reprioritize how we were thinking about it, where historically, people develop ads and kind of try and find key placements, and looking at it through like a Fortune 500 lens, it's really about understanding who your audience is and being able to segment them and score them and target them, and delivering the appropriate message over this very long kind of nurture relationship as they go through their entire research process. And that's not to say that the dialogue strategy and creative isn't important, because it is, but we became much more focused on being able to understand who a quality candidate is and how we deliver the appropriate messaging point and value prop to them is at the right time, knowing that, we can place ads in any, dozens of channels, and, creatively can do anything. So we really reprioritized and kind of rethought about how we were putting, our campaigns in the market with a real emphasis around segmentation, scoring, and messaging. So Corey, if you can go to the next slide, how we were able to do that was, and I'm not going to go through every logo on this slide, don't worry. But what we went out and did is essentially mirror a Fortune 100 MarTech stack. So we made an 8-figure investment into really state-of-the-art marketing technologies, and stitched them together in a way that was unique for higher education, that really allowed us to kind of understand from a data standpoint what a quality candidate for each program looks like, and develop a system where we understand where they are on the web, and how we can kind of target them at the right time in the right place, saying the correct thing. And correct being what's most relevant to them based on what we know about them and where they are in their journey as they kind of, look at and pursue their degree options. Once we were able to do that and kind of understand the data and have a technology infrastructure in place so that we could kind of be able to synthesize it in real time, the next key piece was really about, messaging. We're going to have this week-long, sometimes month-long, sequential conversation with them, marketing conversation with them, as they kind of go through their own process to understand what program is right for them. We didn't want to say the same thing over and over to them again. So, what we did here from developing this value story is we kind of broke everything that we could potentially know about the institutional brand and the program and all the faculty, and kind of captured as much information as possible. And we look at this value story overall as kind of like a huge toolbox, and kind of each one of these pieces is a tool that we have in that toolbox. So as we are messaging and creating advertising in the market, because we know what kind of candidate they are, because we know where they are in their journey, we can start to introduce information that is most relevant to them based on kind of where they are. So, in an online marketplace that's national, you're going to have some students that, might be 25 to 50 miles down the road that are much more familiar with your brand. And we need to lead with more information about the program and maybe accreditation and, career outcome stuff, versus if we're targeting somebody on the other side of the US that we have the right program for, but they're not as familiar with the brand, we need to start introducing things about, the history and the mission of the institution. You know, so all of the same information, we just have the flexibility to deliver it in a different order so that we can maximize the advertising engagements that we're creating. And the final piece here is, you know, this digital storefront, this website. You know, how do we start to present information in a very clear and concise way so that regardless of the information that students are looking for, they can find it quickly, get the information they need, and continue on their way so they move down our funnel so that we can get them into a more thoughtful one-on-one admissions enrollment conversation.
Thanks, Corey. So in addition to the digital storefront, right, there's got to be a level of service, an experience where you can actually reach out to somebody and engage. And consumer research shows that a preference for digital communication is really becoming common. For instance, Gallup found a 58% decline in phone response over the last 20 years. Research also shows that 59% of consumers prefer to use digital channels. That being said, though, some students will always want to discuss the institution or the program over the phone. And there may be situations that require even phone-averse students to jump on a call to finalize some enrollment details. But for all these situations, we have a staff, a dedicated team of admissions advisors and retention specialists to offer support and to support all of the learners that are enrolling at our institutions that we support. This dual approach helps students access the information they need in the format that they prefer. And that's really what this is about, is it's not a one size fits all. You're trying to give consumers, which is what they are, with a lot of options, you're trying to give them the ability to customize their experience. Your students are likely millennials, and right behind that, Gen Zers. And they really are expecting this omni-channel digital experience because they're getting that everywhere else that they go. In addition to sort of thinking about Fortune 100 companies and what they do to engage their customers, in this case, students, they've invested heavily in call center type technology. And Wiley has too, and this is how we support our partner institutions and their learners. Really to provide an unrivaled support to these institutions, we've invested in a proprietary behavioral analytics software. And what this platform does is it records all of the calls that we have with students, all of that engagement, and it really elevates student recruitment and retention by anticipating student needs to tailor support in real time. And it really consists of three features: call recording and analysis to capture all the meaningful insights and to make sure that we're creating a really positive experience for the institution; a behavioral model that enhances how we gauge students, and all of our admissions and retention advisors are trained in it; and then coaching, which fosters student development and success. Another thing that we're able to do with this type of multi-million-dollar investment in this type of technology is we're able to collect all of this unstructured data, and then we're able to run sort of linear regression models on it that allow us to understand in the big data how we customize experiences for learners so that they're ultimately more likely to go on and fill out an application. And by using this kind of technology, we've seen increase in conversion. Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so let's talk about how we can kind of create the Peloton version of a great learning experience. So far we've been talking about the Masters of Special Ed at George Mason. Initially, when we were setting up that program, one of the differentiators of that program was a graduate certificate in autism spectrum disorders. And over time, that's been taken inside of the Masters of Special Ed as a concentration that students can do. When we were talking about the program and really approaching it holistically with the program leaders, one of the things that kept coming up was, oh my gosh, we have this program in autism spectrum disorders, but there is not a field component to it. So there's a scenario where a student can go through this program and never actually meet a student with autism. That would be a travesty. What can we do to kind of solve that problem? So in talking with the program leadership, we talked through what we want students to get exposed to, how we wanted to motivate them. And what we heard was that the best way to learn about students with autism is to meet them. And so what we did, and Corey, if you want to advance to the next slide, is we devoted our resources to filming a series of mini documentaries where we followed around students with autism on various ages, various levels of severity. We filmed them in their homes, we filmed them with caregivers. And so we created a repository of learning material that was really based around these students, these subjects. So this became fodder for case-based activities where you would watch an interaction with the caregiver and evaluate and analyze it, but it also provided a narrative thread throughout the entire learning experience. As you go through the 5 courses in this program, you really get to know these students and you get sort of longitudinal exposure to their disorders and how they're working through them. So, you know, what you're seeing now is just some clips from how we put this footage together. And on the next slide, I'll show you what that looks like in the learning environment. So here's a look of how we integrated these videos into Blackboard, which is the LMS that Mason uses. So here you're seeing a case-based activity where we filmed a long-form clinical interaction between a caregiver and one of our students. And students respond to that by, like I said before, analyzing and evaluating what they're seeing and really synthesizing that to their own practice. So students do that analysis, they submit it to the group, their peers evaluate and respond to it. So we're sort of creating that authentic context where students are giving each other support and really learning from each other. And that's how we kind of create that Peloton type experience where we're sort of replicating what you would do in an on-ground experience, but without the constraints of actually having to like go through a field placement. That's how we're attacking this problem. So in the next slide, you can see that the feedback that we've gotten from the students has been very, very positive. The online students talk about how they've sort of developed relationships with the subjects that they see in the videos. They get that that exposure and that sense of familiarity that they wouldn't get otherwise. We have some more data that I'll show you that really kind of speaks to the impact of this documentary. So you'll see here the green and the yellow represent the top 2 boxes in a Likert scale. Everyone sort of agrees that these videos are motivating, that they increase your confidence in really being able to recognize and be familiar with clinical interventions. And these videos really sort of enhanced and brought the learning experience to life. So this is something that we're very, very proud of, and sort of is a great example of how we approach course design. Let's talk about the problems that we're trying to solve, and let's really come up with a high-end solution that really brings the content to life for our students in a way that's really relevant and really authentic.
Well, we really appreciate your time. I think there is some Q&A, and we'll be here to answer your questions and talk to you about other ways that we're supporting our partners. But hopefully this has sort of given you a sense for how we have worked with our partners, George Mason just being one example, to look out at Fortune 100 companies and see, okay, what are they doing that works really well? How are they creating really positive experiences? And how can we do that in higher education? And with the right people and the right technology and investments, we've been able to create that sort of consumer-oriented experience, both in marketing, in enrollment, retention, and in then, of course, the actual experience of going back to school and getting your degree. So really appreciate your time, and we look forward to answering your questions.